Maybe it's better than Ancestral Recall because
it costs 5 mana and 1 blue to activate it.
Yeah, don't give your opponent's card draw. Fuck them. You're trying to win.
Welcome to the Casting Call cEDH podcast. I'm Blake.
And I'm Chase, and today we're going to be going over some of the cards from Aetherdrift.
So what do you think about the Aetherdrift?
I don't like this set.
Yeah.
I don't like this set all this much.
I actually like the set, but only because there's like 1 or 2 good cards that I really, really want to test out.
I think, like, I'm scrolling through it right now, and, like, there are some okay-ish cards. Mm-hmm. You know, that we'll go over here in a little bit. But other than that, I think it's let me rephrase things. I think it's a really good set for other formats. I think it's a really strong set for Standard in particular. And it appeals really well to that format with the different mechanics that are coming out in it. But when it comes to us and what we're trying to talk about today and the format that we play, I don't see a whole lot out of it. Like, maybe before we dive into the cards, I think that a few weeks ago we were going through the set predictions, and I don't remember exactly what all we talked about, but I know we talked about like there potentially being some energy. I know that I was hoping for some masterpieces or inventions. We unfortunately did not get the Ricky Bobby secret lair. I'm trying to think what else we said. I think we talked about it being like very artifact and vehicle heavy. Yeah. But were there any, or am I missing anything? Is that pretty much it?
I think that was like the bulk of what we talked about. I want to say that we at one point too had said something about there being like, what you said, like the masterpieces, but we talked about potentially like a Mox Opal masterpiece or like a One Ring masterpiece. But you know, instead we just got a lot of vehicles.
We got a lot of like golden shower art.
Golden shower art.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is not something that I'm really looking forward to. But we did end up getting like a reprint of the Chrome Mox in like a couple different arts styles for it. So we kind of got somewhere with that, but even with that being said, it's still a special guest. And some of the other special guest cards are semi-lackluster, I feel like the War of Invention, the art is interesting, at least it's a playable card. But everything else that I saw as far as the special guest cards, nothing really stood out to me.
Do you like the Chrome Mox reprint? Do you think it looks good?
I think it's okay. I think that it's different in a way that it is appealing. I think it catches the eye more than the other cards in the set, and I think it tries to capture some of that element that the masterpieces and the inventions did. But I think it just kind of misses the mark compared to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that it's kind of weird too. I don't understand why they're doing the printings the way they are, because instead of, say, you have like the full art and then you have like the regular art of it, but now they've got some where it's like a different color, like there's like purplish pink look and then there's like a yellow background around. It's like really odd. I don't know. I feel like you could do like, it was like a regular art, like an etched and then maybe full art or something like that, but I just don't understand like the changing of the color background. Like I didn't know what that was about.
I didn't really know either. I think that some of the new arts are kind of more of like a reference to some stuff within like drag racing or things like that. But and maybe part of that is just like an attempt to appeal to a wider audience on it. You know, maybe someone that hasn't necessarily been in Magic or like hasn't been in a long time, but are involved with those other kind of hobbies, or they have those interests and they go, oh, I recognize that. That's pretty cool. Let me see what this is about. Like, I think that is maybe the direction of it. And then other than that, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, aside from the different background stuff, I think we're getting a new foiling treatment, but I think it's like I don't remember exactly what the name of it is. It's almost like the fractured foils from Duskmourn though. So yeah, other than that, like most of the cards in the set, I'm just kind of like meh.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think it'll be a good set for other formats, but not as much in ours. And maybe I'm wrong. And as we continue, you know, I have another opinion on things when we talk about like certain commanders, but we can kind of get into that as we go into this part.
Yeah. So do you want to do this in like Wooburg order?
We probably could, but I don't think that I even have cards from all the colors. I'll be honest.
Well, you know what? Let's do it in Wooburg order, and if we don't have a card for that, we'll shit on the card.
All right. So I'm looking at this, and most of the cards are blue.
Okay, there you go.
So we're skipping out on white. It looks like for now.
Blue's the best color in cEDH.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one that I have within blue is the Repurposing Bay. So for 2 colorless and a blue, it's an artifact. You tap 2, tap it, sacrifice another artifact, search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice artifact's mana value, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle. Activate only as a sorcery.
I feel like that feels almost like a blue Oswald, you know, like the Oswald Fiddlebender.
Yeah.
That's what that feels like. It's just blue Oswald.
Well, it's like blue Oswald or artifact Birthing Pod.
That's fair, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that this is a somewhat decent card. I think that, you know, we've had kind of talks in the past few weeks with other players, you know, in our local meta on this one in particular, like a couple of the Kennen players going, oh, that looks like a good card. Like just being able to like get out the Basalt Monolith real quick, or like even being able to play something like Urza, and taking advantage of being able to tap it for a blue source, or just being able to get like some of your pieces like the Grim Monolith power artifact stuff, or doing Rings of Brightheart and Basalt Monolith and going infinite that way into it. And I think that's a good way of approaching it. But I feel like the decks have to really kind of be built in a certain way in order to take full advantage of it, you know?
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. What was the mana cost of the card?
3.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know. I could see. It's an artifact, right?
Yeah.
Can you sack it to its own ability, or is it other artifact?
Sacrifice another artifact.
Okay, I was just curious. I couldn't remember if you'd said you could or not. Because I was wondering, like, maybe you could sack it and just go grab like a 1 ring or something. Because you said 3, right?
Yeah.
And it's it's the mana value +1.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No. I don't know, man. I mean, it's interesting. I think that there's obviously an application for it. I just can't think of, like you said, like the artifact heavy decks like Urza and stuff like that are in blue, but I guess I just can't really think of many other things that are going to take advantage of it right now. But maybe like a Staxier deck, like you could use it to get rid of some of the Stax pieces when you're ready to go.
Okay.
Or even like you said, only sorcery speed.
Yeah.
Man, fuck. I was thinking like maybe if you could do it on like an opponent's turn if you absolutely needed to get rid of something. But I mean, it's like I said, it's still not bad.
Yeah.
You could always go and I mean, there's stuff you could do. I'm just trying to think of what you could do with it. Like I'm sure there's some shenanigans.
Right.
Or even just going and like maybe you sack something, like you sack a Sol Ring and go get like your Isochron Scepter or something like that.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Well, and like I just brought up Kennen like a little bit ago. Like I think that if you're going to put a card like this into that deck, like with everything that deck already plays as is, it's almost like you're adding this card in for redundancy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it necessarily like is enough to push you to that next level. Like even though it's a deck to like that you can produce a ton of mana off of, I don't know if it's enough. I don't know if it's in a position where you want to take anything out of that deck currently to try to fit this in.
Like, okay, so from this set, I think that this is a good card. cEDH objectively, I think this is a bad card.
Yeah.
Because like it's very situational. Like you have to have, like if you're wanting to go grab something, then like it would almost be like, imagine like if there was a creature tutor that was like 3 mana, sack a creature, and then like you go grab a creature. You know, like we have certain ones like the what is it, like Eldritch Evolution and like the Chord and stuff like that. But you're able to control the amount of mana that you're wanting to go into it, so you can kind of play around, like if it comes down early or comes down late.
Right.
But with that, it's like if you want to do the Basalt thing, then you're going to have to literally go, you know, you're going to have a 2 mana artifact out, you're going to have this out, and then you're going to have the ability to sack it, and then the other artifact come down. Like it's just, there's a lot of...
Yeah, and like even if you go that route too, do you start kind of reconfiguring the deck to where to really take advantage of it? Maybe now you're playing like the keys that allow you to untap artifacts and things like that. And so that's what I'm kind of saying, like, is this a card maybe in that deck in particular? Because that's where, you know, like I said, with our local meta, I feel like that's the deck that most people have focused on for this card in particular. Is it worth almost having to retool your deck in a way just to put this one card in whenever Kennen is already in a decent spot?
Yeah, I don't think so. Now, like I said, I could definitely see, like what you were saying, like an artifact birthing pod. Like maybe if there was a way for you to do some like untapped shenanigans with it, and like you could assemble a combo line. But I don't know. Yeah, I just don't think it's too great. I mean, I don't know. Not that it's bad, but it's just probably not. I don't know what deck would be willing to, like I said, it would have to be very artifact centric.
Right.
If you're not playing a ton of artifacts, then you probably don't want to slot this in. Like even if you're in a deck that's like, maybe you've got like 12 artifacts in your deck, like I still don't really think, because like even then, like it would be kind of cool if you said, oh, okay, I'm going to go and, you know, I'm going to Wish Claw, and then in response to my activation, I'm going to sack my Wish Claw so that nobody actually gets the Wish Claw Talisman, and I'll still get my search. But you can't do that because it's sorcery speed.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, yeah, even that just doesn't.
You could almost do, well, no, because the sacrifice is part of the cost and the effect, so you can't do it the opposite way. No. So yeah, I don't know. I think that, again, maybe this is a card that kind of proves us wrong on this, and maybe some of the other ones, or ones that we're not talking about today, kind of prove us wrong on this set. But again, like looking at this from the cEDH perspective, I just don't see much coming out of this. And while I'm thinking about it, I think I saw a post on Instagram from Star City like less than 2 days ago about how they're already about to start spoiling things for Final Fantasy. Like, I think maybe, like, whenever I see that, that is kind of like an indication of like, oh, maybe this set's not going to do as well as we thought it was going to. So let's go ahead and start pushing the next stuff. Like, give us a break. Let it settle.
Man, I don't know. Like, it's nice. Obviously, you want to push sets because like they're obviously going to make money doing that. But at some point, you have to create some sort of like scarcity. I don't know how, or like, you know what I mean? Like some sort of reason to want to continue to like look stuff up. Like when when a little bit of time has passed and you're like fiending for that next like set to come out, and you're like, man, I really want to rip some packs. I mean, I don't feel that way, but like some people are like, you know, Brandon, he was like, I'm fiending for some, you know, for some cardboard gold. And I'm like, yeah, man, go for it. But like, I just think that there's just so much stuff coming out right now. Like it feels like, I literally feel like there's always something. And then thankfully it's slowing down this year a little bit, but it feels like there's always just something coming out. And so it's almost hard to go ahead and like test all the stuff you want to test before something new comes out. And you're like, well, I got to try and test this thing now. Or people just jump off of their deck and they go to something totally different. I've seen so many people that are like, yep, Ashton, yep, that's it. You know,
well, we'll talk about him later. Yeah. So
sorry, I jumped the gun.
No, you're good. You're spoilers. But anyway,
I won't put his image up. No. Y'all don't know what he does.
So let's kind of keep going. So the next one, like I said, I think I have almost 4 blue cards in this. So the next one, and we talked about this a little bit ago, it's not as good as I was hoping. The Waxen Shape Thief.
Okay.
So this is a 4-drop, 3 colorless and a blue. It is a creature shapeshifter with flash. And you may have this creature enter as a copy of an artifact or creature you control, which is where I thought it was. I didn't read that part. Reading the card explains the card.
Okay.
And then it has cycling 2 on it where you can draw a card.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of what you would even want to clone of your own. Because cards like that are a little bit weird when it's like just clone your own stuff. Because that means that you are already in the driver's seat. Like, I feel like those almost feel like win more cards rather than like pull you out of the depths of being just like, and like I'm not copying an Esper Sentinel for 4 mana.
No. Now, maybe something, maybe something you could copy though. Say if you are in the driver's seat and you have a 1-ring out that has like 6 or 7 burden counters on it, and you're like, I want to keep drawing cards, but I don't want to take all this damage because I'm about to lose to my own 1-ring. You might be able to flash this in at some point, copy your 1-ring, get the protection trigger, sacrifice your old 1-ring. So that way, like, you kind of have a reset on your counters and be able to continue drawing cards and keeps you in the game. Like, that could be a situation I can think of. We talked about it a little bit ago on like the Hull Breaker potential, like as far as like if someone tries to remove your Hull Breaker, you can attempt to flash this in, get the bounce a spell or bounce a permanent trigger, maybe even make a second copy of Hull Breaker and then like continue loops that way through by just being able to outpace everyone. But then it's like you said just there of like, if you're already at that point, you should already be winning, right? You shouldn't need something like this in order to push you that much farther ahead when you're already there.
Yeah.
I do like the cycling on it though. I think that sometimes cards like this end up being a dead card. So at least it gives you a flexible option of like, say you have this in hand, you don't have anything on board, you need to do some kind of top deck tutor and be able to, either try to save the game or things like that. You pick, and you tutor, you cycle this, you get the card that you need, save the game.
Yeah.
I think that because it allows flexibility like that, I think it makes it an okay-ish card.
Yeah.
I just don't know where it's going to fit or what kind of deck it's going to fit into.
Yeah. Well, I could see it in like I've talked to you before about like Sakashima Timna. Like, it could probably fit in a deck like that. But again, that's kind of one of those decks where it's just, that deck already requires you to be doing well and then continue to, what I mean? Like, if at any point the game plan falls apart, your whole plan falls apart.
Right.
So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's odd. It's, but I don't think it's a bad card. I'm sure it'll find a home. I don't know. Now, like in a casual setting, I could find like a ton of like really good decks that it would probably fit in. But right now, I don't know. I can't think of anything in cEDH, like I said. And again, it's, I do agree with you. Like, oh yeah, like it could kill off like you could, sack your own 1-ring to the legend rule type deal. But like, I find that I think most people are probably having the issue of not having enough counters on their 1-ring more often than like, my 1-ring is going to kill me. Now, obviously, if you're doing some crazy shenanigans with the 1-ring, then maybe, but even still, 4 mana to devote to it to like kill off your 1-ring.
Right.
Like, I get it, you paid 4 mana for the 1-ring, but if that's all you're holding it up for and that's it, like, I can't really think of anything else that you would want to clone because, again, you have to have it. Like, it can't clone a Seedborn Muse. It can't clone. You can clone your own Esper Sentinel, but it's a 4 mana Esper Sentinel at that point. Not good. I just really can't think of any other creature. Maybe it would be fine in like, I don't know, like we were talking about Plagon earlier. Like, maybe it comes down as a Plagon or as another, just something, it comes, I don't know. Like I said, it could come down, get the ETB, and then maybe it dies. And then if you have a way to like bring it back, I don't know, just maybe some shenanigans.
I mean, and even we were talking about this earlier, like I think Bowmaster is a card that comes to mind to me. Like, even though that's whenever I realized I fucked up on the reading and that this card isn't as good as I thought it initially was. But like, there are so many games that I've played where it's like, in response to, well, I'm going to cast a Bowmaster. Well, I'm going to cast my Bowmaster, kill that Bowmaster. I'm going to kill your Bowmaster with this Bowmaster that I'm about to flash in. Yeah. Maybe this is kind of a way of like, if you have those type of interactions, to be able to go, I'm going to respond to your Bowmaster ETB targeting my Bowmaster by flashing this in, and on its ETB, I'm going to kill your Bowmaster here.
Yeah.
But again, you're spending 4 mana just to gotcha.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I was just going in my head thinking like if you play Gilded Drake or something like that, or even like a Volatile Drake, you could technically cast the Drake, and then in response to its like ETB, you could technically flash this in to then ETB as the Drake and get additional energy if you wanted to steal something bigger. Technically,
okay.
Not that you would want to do that, but then like you could technically take something that's bigger and then take like a small thing and like 2-for-1 it.
Yeah,
but that's a lot of mana. That's 6 mana. So I'm just thinking of ideas, but I don't think that's great. But just ideas,
So I think moving on past that, the next blue card that I have, and it's not a great card, but we just talked about the One Ring quite a bit. So I think this card is fitting. It's Transit Mage.
Okay, yeah.
So 3-drop, 2 and a blue, human wizard. When this creature enters, you may search your library for an artifact card with mana value 4 or 5, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. So like instantly right away, I'm just like, okay, you're paying 3 mana to tutor for the One Ring out of your deck.
Yeah.
Which I think is still good. Don't get me wrong. I think that is still okay. But it's the 4 and 5 spot is really odd because that is tip in most decks right now. You're only tutoring for the One Ring.
Yeah.
Unless you are something that's very like artifact heavy and you can, maybe even cheat out some of the bigger stuff and then be able to do this. Like the only other card that kind of comes to mind for me, and well, we might talk about this a little bit later, but like I think Aetherflux Reservoir is a 4-drop too. So I mean that can be, it's in the right colors if players are trying to go for like Aetherflux wins, because typically you're like, is it or a Storm, which has blue in it. At least this is blue. You can tutor that out if you need to, go and then like be able to go off from there. But outside of that, it is just kind of like a meh card.
I wonder if this would be like a, I don't know if it would or not, but I wonder if it could be like a Shorekai card potentially. I forget how that deck wins, but it needs, you create loops, obviously like infinite stuff to like draw your deck and other things like that. Like you can filter your mana and stuff into it. But I just wonder if like it's very artifact heavy, so I wonder if there's like a Shorekai card that it may want to grab. I'm not sure, but I just wonder. I can't remember if it uses Aetherflux or not either. I don't remember exactly what it does, but maybe it could do something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, technically this would grab, I know it's silly, but I mean, it technically can grab like a Phyrexian Metamorph, right?
Yeah, it can grab a Phyrexian Metamorph. It can technically grab like any of the, like if there's a big artifact creature.
Yeah.
But you're not typically going to see that in most decks that we are trying to run.
Yeah.
Now, it is a card that, and I'll talk about the deck later on when we get to that portion of this, but I think that there is the combo line I can utilize this for. Okay, so kind of moving on then, because I don't think there's much else. This is the last blue card that I have, though.
I think it's probably the best blue card out of the lot.
I think so, too. So this is Unstoppable Plan. 3-drop, 2 and a blue, enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, untap all non-land permanents you control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that we were talking about this in the Zerd Discord because it is a fetchable target, but there's just like no reason that we would really want to play that. Like we're gonna go in step shenanigans anyway. It's so like we're not gonna get any of the untapped stuff by the time we're already there. Like you're more than likely gonna grab Necro instead because I mean you're always gonna grab.
Yeah.
Screw nothing against this card, but yeah, I would always go instead grab Necro. So like we're an 3 mana or less enchantment deck, and we're not even necessarily like sure we'll even slot it in. So I just don't know where it's going to find a home in. Even for decks like Kinnan, I know that they've talked about it, and it could be nice, but what is it? It's untap all. What is it?
Non-land permanents.
Yeah. So I mean, like in that deck, it seems pretty good. Like I feel like you almost have to be in green to take full advantage of this because like it is nice. You can untap your artifacts and stuff, but you really want to be using it to untap like a ton of things and just net a ton of mana.
Right.
So I definitely think that it could be really good. And same thing, you could do some One Ring abusing with it. But
I definitely feel like this is like it's an Urza card. Like obviously you're not going to be able to like get much out of it by like tapping it down with like because it's not an artifact or anything like that. But if this allows the Urza player to untap going into the next person's turn, and then, you know, say if, especially if it's like the Staxy build, during their turn, they can tap down all of their artifact stacks pieces, and then this triggers untap it all, go into your turn, and then it continues to create a little bit more of the asymmetrical effect that deck is wanting to try and go for. Now, are we seeing a lot of Urza at like cEDH events? No, not typically, but that is a deck that kind of comes to mind for me on this card. I think as far as like it being a Kennen, I think it's okay enough because like you're not like in that deck. Once you get going, you're not really focused on your lands. Like you should be producing enough mana through your rocks and your dorks that I think that this card is really usable in that deck. And I know you brought it up for Zur, just kind of like it being a little bit clunky because you're already fighting that 3-drop spot with like Rhystic Study, the Mirror Maid, Necropotence, like things like that. And so it's like it's kind of like what I said earlier on the other card. What do you take out just to try this out? Or is this even good enough to change up the composition of the deck in order to make this one work?
Dude, a lot of these cards just feel like they're in weird position. I don't know where they fit in because like it's nice to be able to untap and do stuff, but the worry, and I mean I've seen people do this too, but like the worry is like you try to slam Seaborn Muse and you tap out because you're like, oh, I'll get to untap. Well, the reason Seaborn Muse is so good is because it's every person's instep.
Right.
Like this is just on your instep. Not that that's a bad thing, but would benefit the most in a deck that utilizes dorks plus rocks, so like green decks. But then your green decks are the ones that have the best like creature tutors and stuff. So I feel like you would just rather go Seedborn Muse instead, if that makes sense.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, like I think it makes sense. And like I mentioned this earlier with like one of the other cards that like it's like do you slot it in for the sake of redundancy and being able to ensure that you are getting more consistency with those type of effects. But I mean, I agree with you. I think that obviously Seaborn Muse, I think we're pretty much in a Seaborn Muse meta. Yeah. It's too good of a card not to play if you're playing green. I think having blue, having an effect that can kind of copy that without it being like a copy target creature or like a Machine God's effigy or something like that, I think is okay. But even as a blue player, like you are going to be more dependent on your lands than the Kennen player is going to be.
Like I said, I feel like the people that would take advantage of it best are going to be the decks that have like mana sinks in the zone.
Right.
So like stuff like Thrasios, like Urza, things like that. So yes, to me it would make sense in a deck like that because you're using the mana to then to get yourself cards. So like it makes sense in that deck. But like for me in Zur, I would cast it, it would come down, like in Esper deck, for instance, it would come down, and then I'll untap during my instep, but then like I don't have anything to do with that mana. So like what was the point of even casting this thing to begin with? Like I might as well not have done anything. You know, so it's just weird because then I have one less card in my hand and they know like now you've got one less card to interact at the table with. And not saying that it's bad, but I just don't. I think that it fits best in decks that have mana sinks in the zone.
Right. No, I agree with that. Moving on. So that was the last blue card.
Okay.
I don't think I had a single black card. And like again, I'm kind of scrolling through and I'm not like maybe good for other formats like or even more casual. Like I'm looking at this one, Gonti Knight Minister.
Gonti.
4-drop, 2 colorless, 2 black. He's a 3/4. Whenever a player casts a spell they don't own, that player creates a treasure token. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller looks at the top card of that opponent's library and exiles it face down. They may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Mana of any type can be spent to cast a spell this way. So, like, it's like combining opposition agent and like maybe Praetor's Grasp and Ragavan all on one card and going, here you go. Like, play against one another. You know, like, oh, rather than attacking me, attack him, like almost like a political piece in a way. But is that good enough whenever we have other cards? It's just like you said, like we already have like some strong cards or at least format staples, and now they're giving us cards that kind of do the same thing. But then is it as strong as what we're already playing?
Did that say that like if hang on. So even if your opponent attacks one of your other opponents, they will exile the top card and then that opponent can play it?
Yes. It says whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller looks at the top card of that opponent's library and exiles it face down.
Yeah, fuck that. That's terrible. Why would you're just giving resources to, like, especially if imagine you're a deck that you're not playing a ton of creatures. Dude, no, like, even though you're going to get some card draw, or maybe you'll get some cards.
It's almost like, and I know I said things like Ragavan and Praetor's Grasp and Opposition Agent maybe to some extent with it, because you can use any colored mana. I think that's part of Oppo, right?
Like any color mana.
Yeah. So, but it's also like kind of one of the like propaganda or ghostly prison type effects where, it's you slam this down and you're like, oh, don't swing at me, because you're not going to either get enough out of it or, things like that. Like with those cards in particular, you had to pay 2 for each creature that attacks you. But this is like, oh, if you attack me, you're not gonna get anything out of this. So don't fuck with me. That's all it does.
Yeah.
And it might just sit there and not do jack shit the whole game. And then you've wasted 4 mana for this dude.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that the reason Ragavan's good is like you can dash it in, yes, or you can just let it sit there and hit the field. But like it fucks with top deck tutors, which is fantastic. It's going to get you a treasure and potentially get you a card. I mean, it's 1 mana. So like it comes down turn 1, turn 2, you're already like, you got an extra card, you got a treasure, you're ramping, you're adding cards. Now maybe you can't cast the card, but like, oh well, maybe it was something that your opponent needed. They fucked up. They top deck tutored whenever you had a Ragavan out and you're like, oh buddy. But yeah, that just seems bad. Cause like imagine if all of a sudden somebody explodes out with a couple of, imagine Magda's at the table and Magda starts beating old buddy's ass over here, excuse my language, but next thing you know, they toss a consult. That's not good.
Well, I mean, I think another deck too that kind of comes to mind for me, and I'll talk about this a little bit after we get done with these cards, Winota. Like if Winota gets a bunch of like flips and is able to just beat face, and like they're not attacking you, but they're attacking the other 2 players, and then they're getting a bunch of cards off of them, and then they just fucking keep going. Like, and that's what I'm saying. I'll talk about that commander specifically, kind of in the middle of this for today. But
could you imagine Winota with a Rhystic Study? God bless.
That's basically what that card, the Gonti, would be allowing a Winota player to do.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it's a great card. There's a reprint of Bloodghast.
I mean, it's okay.
But aside from that, I don't see anything else in black that is appealing whatsoever.
Skip it. No,
so then we're going to red. So the one red card I think is actually somewhat okay, and we've already talked about Magda. I think this is going to be a Magda card, is the Boommobile. So for 4, 2 colorless, 2 red, it's an artifact vehicle. When this vehicle enters, add 4 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to activate abilities, and then it has the exhaust. Now, we didn't talk about exhaust earlier, so the mechanic for exhaust is, you can pay into it. We'll tap, we'll talk about exhaust a little bit later with one of our commanders, but you can only use it once. And so I could see I didn't even finish off the text. So for X2 and red, this vehicle deals X damage to any target. Put a +1/+1 counter on this vehicle. Crew 2, which is kind of nice because it's a 5/5. But being able to, if you have this in hand as a Magda player and you need to, get rid of an opposition agent, I'm going to get this down and then be able to put the 4 mana, at least the 4 mana you get off of it, into the exhaust effect as soon as it comes down. And you can almost kill the oppo right then and there and put a +1/+1 counter on some of your stuff. If you have, even if you want to put on Magda to protect it a little bit more, I think that that's a okay enough card that this might be a consideration for that deck.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I think that makes sense. But I don't know how Magda works. We're not going to... Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I don't really have anything to add to it. I think that seems fine. Man, it's just weird because, again, I don't really understand how Magda... I don't know all the cards in Magda, so it really just going to come down to, would they want to replace one of the other cards with something like this? I think it's fine. And obviously, having more vehicles to allow you to crew your pieces sounds great. But, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they've just got so many cards in the deck.
Right.
But yeah.
So I don't know. Aside from that, that's the only red card I've seen truly that's just that kind of stands out to me for that deck in particular.
Yeah.
Now the next, this is going to be the last card that I have for us to kind of talk about. And with that being said, I didn't even include anything for green. So moving on, then the last card is actually just an artifact. And again, this is probably another Magda card. So it is the Lifecraft Engine. For 3 colorless, is an artifact vehicle. As this vehicle enters, choose a creature type. Vehicle creatures you control are the chosen creature type in addition to their other types. Each creature you control of the chosen type other than this vehicle gets +1/+1.
Yeah, it's a fantastic Magda card.
Yeah.
Now, this card is the shit. This will go in for sure.
Yeah, and it's a crew 3.
How much mana is it?
It is a 3-drop that has a crew 3 and it's a 4/4, and you're buffing your dwarves. You are as soon as it comes in, you're crewing it and getting at least 3 treasures or so.
This is one of those cards where they'd probably be willing to literally crack some of their treasures to cast it to then crew their stuff, because every artifact you crew is now a dwarf. So the artifacts are dwarves, your dwarves are dwarves, it's a dwarf,
Right.
Yeah, so that's good. Yeah,
I forgot about that. So if you're playing the vehicles anyway and they become dwarves, your clown car is now a dwarf.
Yes.
Is it the
unlicensed hearse?
Now a dwarf, and you're getting more treasures off of that. I think honestly, as far as a cEDH standpoint goes, this is the best card that I think got printed, and there's only one deck that is going to play it.
100%. I agree with that 100%. I have nothing more to add to that take.
So, I mean, that's pretty much it. And I know that before we kind of got into that, we forgot to talk about exhaust. The other mechanic of this set, the start your engines and max speed stuff, I think is just bullshit. I think that is so fucking dumb. But again, I don't think they don't make these sets with us in mind. And I think it is a really strong mechanic in Standard. I don't know about Pioneer, and I don't know about Modern or any of the other formats like that, but Standard in particular, I think is getting a really big boost in this format. And actually, I've looked at it from that standpoint too, and I've gone, okay, maybe this gets me back into playing that, but I don't know. But other than that, do you have any, did anything come to mind as we were talking about these cards, or was there anything else you could kind of think of? Or
no, man. Honestly, what was crazy is we were talking about the guy that played Winota at that tournament, and he was even saying that he saw some cards that may be Winota cards, and I was going through the set being looking for the Winota cards, and I didn't see anything. I mean, I really didn't see hardly anything in that set that looked That card right there, the one you just read off, that is probably the best card as far as like for a cEDH deck that we're seeing. And like you said, it fits in like one deck.
I think that time will tell on that deck because I think that it's just kind of dying. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. It still has some dedicated pilots though, which is cool because with any deck like that, again, I play Zer, and like as soon as the new card comes out, we're in the Discord talking about stuff. Winota's kind of the same way. It's got very dedicated pilots. They really like her. So I don't think she's going anywhere. It's just obviously it's hard to rebuild that representation once it's gone down a little bit. But if something comes out and she just like makes a resurgence, you'll see people switch to it. It's just like Kennen. Like we got some bans and some stuff happen. Kennen saw a huge surge of new players because everybody was like, oh, Kennen benefited. He didn't lose Mana Crypt or Jewel. Oh, excuse me. He didn't lose Mana Crypt or Jewel Lotus, so he's fine.
Right.
And everybody was like, oh, yeah, Kennen. And then it just, boom, big surge of people. So, like, I think that Winota could see a comeback eventually because, again, we're always going to get creatures. We're always going to be printing new creatures, so, like, maybe we'll see it. But, yeah, man, it's just weird.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird ones.
Well, I think with that being said, that's pretty much all of just the cards that from the set that I had kind of looked at and gone, these are okay. We'll talk about it. But that's separate from what we're about to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the specific commanders that either we are looking forward to or we will soon be playing on the channel.
Yeah.
And so let's go ahead and let's get this zombie wizard out of the way. This is probably the one I feel like you were the most hyped up for.
Yeah.
Out of the entire set, or maybe even out of the Esper color pile that you've seen in a minute.
Well, what's so funny? Go ahead and finish what you were saying. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, I was about to go into what it was.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, so if you haven't guessed by now, this is Hashaton Scarab's Fist. So it is in Esper colors because the blue is within the color identity, but the casting cost is a black and a white, so Orzhov, for a 1/3. It's a legendary creature zombie wizard, which that part is insane alone. But then the effect, whenever you discard a creature card, you may pay 2 and a blue. If you do, create a tapped token that's a copy of that card, except it's a 4/4 black zombie.
Yeah. So this deck is very interesting, and I actually really like it because I've been so enchantment heavy for so long that now I kind of like the fact that I'm able to play a more creature-based strategy, especially in Esper. When I first looked at this commander, I didn't see the blue pip in the activated ability, so I thought it was just Orzhov, and I was like, fuck this, and I didn't even pay any attention to it. And then somebody in the Zer Discord sent an invite, and they were like, hey, if you want to join, like, join. And I was like, what? And I clicked on it, and then all of a sudden I realized it was Esper, and I was like, oh, get me in here right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to check this thing out. And then so it's been fun, honestly, just brewing the deck. I feel like this deck is it's cool because, again, like it is very different than Zer. I try to play Zer very like commander agnostic. Like I don't want to be casting Zer unless I absolutely like need to pivot to that plan. I would rather just like kind of police the table and play as smart as I can. Hashaton, I've seen different builds for it. Some people are building it, again, very commander agnostic. They're playing it they're playing it in a way that is very, I'm trying to think of how to say this, like very Esper control still, like very shell, good cards. And then they play like a couple of cards that synergize with Hashaton specifically. But some people have gone full into the Hashaton plan. They've got a ton of discard outlets, like the Putrid Imp, and then like the Tortured Existence and other stuff like that. Diamond Lion, LED, all sorts of like crazy stuff like that, which is really fascinating, which is risky because, you're pitching your whole hand to like commit to this thing. I like the effects more that just say like you can discard one card. And that was actually something I was going to bring up. Not that I think that it would matter, but honestly, like you may be able to abuse that one flash copy card earlier. The one that we were talking about, the one that's like 4 mana flash.
The Waxen Thief.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like for instance, like you may be able to cycle it for 2 to draw you a card, but then pay the Hashaton mana. So instead of casting it for 4, you cast it for 3, a token comes in, and then you can clone something if you wanted to clone it. So technically you could have it come in as like a second Consphinx or something crazy like that. I just didn't want to like spoil the Hashton stuff. So like I was thinking maybe you can abuse it in that. You know, there is one card for some reason I can't think of the name of it. It's Sherman. I can't think of the name of the card for some reason. It's an Esper card, but it's like an Esper Sphinx. Not Tivit though.
Is it Shroom?
Sure. Yeah, that I think. Yeah,
Shroom Hedge Maze.
Yeah,
Mage,
something
like that.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, for that card, like if it dies to, so for instance, like let's say you have this card enter as a copy of Shroom, then the ETB will go on the stack. The card dies, then you can select it even though it wasn't in the graveyard. And I checked the ruling, but like you can select that card as the artifact that you want to bring back with Shroom's ability. So you'd bring it back, it would die to the Legend Drill again, and it would go infinite. So if you have some sort of like Blood Artist type of effect, you can go infinite there and like make outlets with that.
That's actually like one of the first cEDH decks I ever played.
Really?
A long time ago.
Really?
And like basically it was like more of like mill out the table strategy with like Alter the Brood and things like that.
Gotcha, yeah. Yeah. And so like same thing, like Shroom, if you pitch it, like if you have a Blood Artist on the field and you pitch the Shroom to make a clone that is one, it will bring back the original. That ETB goes on stack, it dies, and then you go infinite because like it'll just keep bringing itself back and dying, and then a Blood Artist will drain the table. So there's like ways that you can use that to like manipulate the board. But I think the deck's really, really cool. And the thing that I like about it is it's 2 mana, so it turns on some of the cards that I play in Xur that are just not good. Like some of the ones that are like, you know, like which one is it? Is it Fierce
Guardianship?
Where if you have your commander out, same thing. That card is almost never live in Xur because I almost never cast him anymore.
Yeah.
In this, it's live, you know, turn 2, turn 3.
Probably turn 1.
Yeah, depending on when I cast it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like it's immediately live. I love the fact that that's the case. Honestly, I can play like Mox Amber in this because like it comes down kind of early, and I mean even Ken and decks like they play it. You know, so like I can throw it down in that deck. I like the fact that I've got that opportunity, so it makes Mox Oval even better. So there's a couple things that I really, really like about the deck.
Now, I think with Mox Amber, you have to be careful, though, because I don't think it takes into consideration the full color identity of the creature. I think that it takes only the casting as its color.
Fair enough.
So I think you can only tap the Mox Amber for Orzhov colors, which makes it a little bit weaker than probably you were thinking.
True. It does, actually. Good point. But no, like the deck seems really cool. And like I said, I just like the fact that it's like I like the fact that I'm being able to play a creature-centric strategy in Orzhov because I don't get to do that very often, or Orzhov in Esper, because I don't do that very often. Again, like you kind of have Xur, which is very enchantment heavy, and then you have Tivit, which is very artifact heavy. And this is kind of nice because it's Esper, but it's very creature heavy. And so I like that kind of stuff. So I'm just curious to see, I'm curious to see how it does in gameplay. I need to honestly whip the deck out at some point, like go and get it together and then like get some more games and stuff in with it.
Right.
But right now I've just been, again, like a lot of us have been chatting and figuring out stuff for the deck, and it's been fun. But I think that that's probably, out of every commander that I've seen in the set, I think that it's for sure the best cEDH commander.
Right. And so, I guess what kind of comes to mind for me, like one of the comments that I made whenever I was going through and reading the kind of the stats on the card, I think that in particular, the wizard part is very relevant. Cavern Souls, wizard, uncounterable Hashton, uncounterable Thassa's Oracle, like things like that. Esper, as far as like a tribal color, I mean, there's already a ton of zombie support. So I think that this is a commander that could probably honestly be really flexible and go one way or another, whether it's casual or cEDH, which I think is really good for the same reasons like how we talked before on like, again, Magda, not to bring her back, but Yuriko, things like that, like where, people can kind of pivot back and forth between a more casual setting to the cEDH table. I think this commander fits that in particular. Obviously, like the uncounterable Thassas, where you could pitch the Thassa and then make a copy and for one more mana, which most of the time you wouldn't really want to do that. But if they're, if you're worried about a red elemental blast which is typically one of the few cards that will ever counter the Thassa's, then you might go that direction of, oh, I'm going to pitch this Thassa's Oracle, make a copy, and then with that ETB on the stack, I'm going to resolve this Demonic Consultation or Tainted Pact.
This is going to sound kind of silly, but one of the things that I'm actually more excited for, because again, you know me, I'm going to play very Esper shell control, like control shell. One of the things that I'm honestly more excited for than anything with this is not even like the Thassa line with that. It's because, I mean, they can still stop the consultation and stuff like that. But honestly, I'm more excited about not having to pay 2 white pips for Ranger Captain or Grand Abolisher. Like, I would rather just pitch those and let them come in uncounterable.
And they could be 4/4s.
Yeah.
Like,
and then let them come in, and then I can, boom, get like rocking with it, you know? Like, I think that would be really, really good. But yeah, like I just, you know, again, just making cards like that uncounterable that then I can, you know, for Abolisher, he's down, and then I'm safe to go for the win.
Yeah.
With Ranger Captain, he's down, and then I can crack him and then go for the win. You know, whatever it is I need to do. And then I can still go, you know, I could go Ranger Captain and then go get the Esper Sentinel. And then, you know, if I don't have a win right then, I can pitch the Esper Sentinel and it comes back as a 4/4 Esper Sentinel. Nobody's paying 4 mana for an Esper Sentinel. So, like, that's awesome. I think that this actually makes Polywog Prodigy really good, too. Because, like, Polywog's one of those that's just, it struggles anyway. With this, I can just pitch it, and then it comes up as a 4/4. So now anytime somebody plays 3 mana or less, I get to draw a card for it. Like, that's pretty solid. Yeah. I mean, that covers the bulk of cEDH.
Yeah.
You know, now obviously there's a couple cards that I want to draw off of, but like, you know, it's a lot better than just dropping one on basically 0, and you draw just on 0 drops. It comes down as a 1, and then you only draw on 0 drops. Like, yeah, it's way better. So I think that it makes for some really, really funny shenanigans and interactions, and I'm really excited to see how the deck plays in those like situations outside of, I don't know. I like the fact that I know this sounds silly, but that's one of the things that I'm really liking about Esper is there's so many different directions that you can take stuff. Like I threw Master of Keys together. And again, like I said, very enchantment heavy. Tivit, very artifact heavy. This very creature heavy. Like I have so many different directions and like fun ways that you can mess around with this stuff now. So it's just fun. I just enjoy Esper, man. It's you know me. So anytime they come out with something like this, I'm going to check it out. And I really like this. And the other thing that's cool is like I was originally going to play something like Sakashima Timna. And then I was like, okay, this is a very creature-centric build. But I was like, man, this is kind of like fragile. This feels a little less fragile. You know what I mean? Once the ability's on the stack, even if they want to remove it, like, okay, cool, whatever. Like, at least I can get some kind of value or something out of it. So I'm just excited to see how it goes. But yeah.
I got nothing else on this one. I've been looking at all the other ones in preparation for our gameplay video that we'll hopefully get out and be able to do soon.
Yeah.
So kind of moving from Esper and now into Timber Colors. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is probably the second best commander to come out of the set. And it's the one that I'm honestly most excited for. But Loot the Pathfinder. Yep. So for 2 colorless, a green, blue, and a red, you get this 2/4 gremlin. He's not a gremlin, but he looks like a gremlin.
I thought that was the actual creature type. I was
no,
like,
he's a beast noble.
That's a gremlin.
But I'm not going to feed him after midnight. So he has double strike, vigilance, and haste, which those are 3 very powerful keywords. But then he has 3 exhaust abilities. So for a green, you could tap him and add 3 mana of any one color. For a blue, you can tap him and draw 3 cards. And for a red, you can tap him. Loot deals 3 damage to any target. So I looked at that and like I didn't think about this until I've been like doing my research and like I was listening to other channels and things like that. But they make it like some of the people that I've been listening to for this card make an excellent point. Loot in Timber Colors is a Dark Ritual, a Ancestral Recall, and a Bolt. All on one body. And so being able to have access to, like, even though, in cEDH, you don't see a lot of Lightning Bolt. Dark Ritual runs rampant, and Ancestral Recall being one of the most powerful cards ever printed. All on one card, I think is insane. However, those are all exhaust abilities, and that's the part that sucks. But you're in the right colors. You could play Food Chain. You could play Squee. You can generate your infinite creature mana as long as you have some open like dorks or rocks or lands. You can be able to then cast Loot, filter that through the first ability. Like if you want to go infinite green and then infinite red, and then you continue to do it, and then you shoot the table with Loot's, lightning bolt abilities. Like it's a phenomenal food chain commander. It's in great colors for it. Having the extra blue, I think, puts it. I feel like this card in particular like fits that food chain slot where like if you want to like between a Tali and a Traxa, like if you don't want to go the full 4-color route for a Traxa and food chain shenanigans, you go into this. But if you want something a little extra than what a Tali provides with some extra protection, you go into this. And there's some really interesting synergies. Like, for example, I just said a Tali there. Like, obviously, you want to play a lot of, like, blink type effects or make multiple copies. You could do that in this deck, but you also have access to Displacer Kitten. The fact that Loot has haste and you have Displacer Kitten and you're able to just blink him and you keep going, or if you need to draw cards or shoot something off the board to be able to protect your own wins, do what you need to, I think the synergies there are really great. And I've been working on lists for like a week or so for this one and some of the other commanders we'll talk about in a second. But there's a lot of different directions in these colors, and you and I we had previously discussed like whether or not Underworld Breach and doing like the Breach LED Brain Freeze lines within this is it something that's really viable, or are we playing Breach for just the value? And I'm just like, okay, and I think this is what my thought process on it was. Like, if that Breach line has to be like a backup win and you just mill out the table, even if you aren't able to shoot the table for some reason with Lou, you're getting the Infinite Storm off Food Chain. Why not put Brain Freeze in? Like, if it's in your hand, you just Brain Freeze out the table. And like, if you're playing that card, and then you're already, like, if you choose to do the Underworld Breach just to have some graveyard recursion, that's where my thought process was of like, might as well go ahead and include this combo in here because you're in the colors for it, and it's the backup win, but it also has the synergies to some extent with the food chain and some of the other pieces in it. Other than that, like, this deck's playing like Deadeye Navigator and Hullbreaker lines and like a few other things. Like, it can be a little all over the place and seem like a lot all at once, but you're going for that main strategy of get Loot out, blink him a bunch of times, kill the table. And that's what I kind of like about it.
Yeah. I honestly like this deck quite a bit because it feels like, I don't know, like it reminds me a lot of, I feel like of like a Ukama Kazur type build, but you also have advantage in the zone plus the mana. You know what I mean? Because like, you have the draw 3 card ability, plus you have the mana ability. So like, even if you can't get to the food chain like immediately, you can still cast Loot and do stuff with it. And then the win is also right there on the card. Like, you don't have to go and do all that and then try to find the win con. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just nice. I think that it's really good. And same thing, if you get into like a weird little pinch where, let's say because like those are instant speed abilities, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like imagine like you have, for some reason you have him down and you go to tutor to go get your food chain and somebody drops an opposition agent.
Just bolt it.
Kill it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. So I was like, oh, sorry. And same other. So I just think that that's actually really, really good. I think that card's really good. Is it pay the mana and then you draw 3 cards, or is it target player draws 3 cards?
It just says draw 3 cards.
Okay.
So
I was going to say that would be really busted if it was like any player, because then you could technically fuck up a Thassa line. Like somebody goes ETB on the stack and you're like, no, fuck you, draw 3 cards.
that would be great.
Yeah, but so when you said Ancestral Recall, I know it's like what, you draw 3, or it's like force an opponent to draw 3.
I think Ancestral Recall also reads just draw 3 cards.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's you draw 3 or force an opponent to draw 3, right? Like that's what Ancestral Recall reads.
No, I think it's just draw 3 cards. So I think it's referring to you.
No, I think you can do both.
Can you? Oh, let me look it up. I'm a laptop guy, so let me.
You look it up.
Yeah, you're right.
So that was the only reason I thought that. Whenever you said Ancestral Recall, I was like, oh, that'd be sick. You could fuck up a Thassa line.
Maybe it's better than Ancestral Recall because
it costs 5 mana and 1 blue to activate it.
Yeah, don't give your opponent's card draw. Fuck them. You're trying to win.
Yeah, and then stopping a Thassa wins you the game.
Right.
It doesn't win you the game. It just wins the next guy the game. Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been experimenting around a lot with this build. Like, being able to include other cards or even other lines. Like, I've looked at doing like Ewit, Cloud of Fairies, like Cloudstone Curio stuff. I've gravitated away from that, but still having like Ewit and Snap and Gaia's Cradle or like Cloud of Fairy lines, being able to do that, or like and those cards in particular have great synergies with Displacer Kitten as is. So like you get a lot of value in those cards. Is it Sowing Mycospawn? It's the green Eldrazi that's not really green because it has Devoid. Like being able to tutor for something like an Emergent Zone or a Gaia's Cradle and put it directly onto the battlefield, and being able to get either your pieces to combo off or being able to like present like an instant speed win that way. If you loop that with Hullbreaker lines, then you just start exiling everyone's lands after you've generated like every color and like and colorless mana that you can. Like there's a lot of really interesting things you can do with this deck, even with loot. Like if he gets locked out, obviously like massive value engine in the command zone, but then that's why all these other pieces are in this deck too. Of like, if I'm locked out of loot, or if I'm able to present a win faster than I can get to the mana to cast loot, I'm just gonna go for it. So there is that. And hopefully I will have a deck list soon. And I think that, if we're going to have gameplay on this, hopefully we'll have deck lists linked too. So that way you could kind of check us out, tell us what what cards we forgot to put in here, argue with us on, what's good, what's bad, how you would have done it. Let us hear about it. So other than that, those are, I think, the top 2 commanders. Now I have some other ones that we could kind of talk about. Are you ready for these?
Yes. Okay. I'm also glad that you spoke mostly about loot, because I felt bad just talking a lot about the Hashatan. I was like, damn, I need to give him a second to talk.
Oh, it's okay. I know you and your Esper, you got like a little bit of a hard on for it.
It was a big hard on. Massive.
So these next commanders, I don't know if they're necessarily cEDH viable, but at least 2 of these are going to make an appearance, I think, or maybe one of these at least will make an appearance when we do the gameplay video. And the first one, and I'm actually kind of excited for him, is Mendicant Core Guidelight. So he is a star and 3 for a blue and a white. So we're in Azorius colors. He's a legendary artifact creature robot, which I think that's kind of cool. And his power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. The downside to him is that he does have a start your engines ability and he has a max speed ability. So, start your engines. I know we didn't really talk about it all that much earlier, but if you don't have any speed built up, whenever you have a creature or whatever enter, effect that allows you to start speed, when it goes off, you start at 1. And then each time an opponent takes damage or loses life, I think it's a red loss of life, on your turn, you increase your speed, and you can only do it once per turn with a max speed of 4. So there's that. And then at max speed, whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay 1 if you do copy it.
There's a question for you, just so I can understand this whole speed mechanic. If let's say you have already done something to up the speed of another card that has max speed, and then you cast this thing, does it come in with the speed of 1, or is speed a universal thing? You know what I mean? Is the speed, do you have I don't know, your speed's already 3, so then by the time this thing comes down and somebody's dealt the damage, you're at max speed? Or how does that work? Or or do you have to keep track of each thing's speed?
I think, are you saying if you have multiple things that have the start your engines and max speed mechanics?
Yes.
Is it for each individual thing?
Yes.
No, I don't think it is like that. I think that it is. I think it plays just like how in Lord of the Rings, whenever the ring tempts you, is wherever you build it up to, that's where you're at.
Okay.
So like if he gets removed, it's not like you have to start back
over
at 0. You stay at whatever you were at.
Does start your engines like do you have to have a card that says start your engines for you to start building speed?
I believe so. Okay. So like how with werewolves, the day and night mechanic, like nothing really happens until you play something that has the day and night mechanic, and then that's whenever that's introduced into the game. I think it's the same concept here.
Yeah, I just didn't know. Like, let's say turn 1, for some reason, like on your end step, somebody decides they're going to fetch. Like, do you immediately go to like speed 2, or how does that work?
No, because it only triggers once per turn. So it say, for example, and this is kind of the premise of the deck: get Mendicant on turn 1. Okay, you're probably not getting much of a start your engine trigger, rather aside from him just entering the battlefield and going to 1. Now, if someone chooses to fetch on your turn, whenever it gets back into that second turn, then you'll get a trigger because it's a loss of life.
Okay.
And so you'll go up to 2, but the game plan really is you want to be swinging with him on turn 2.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of craft a hand where you're trying to get him out on 1. You have enough artifacts maybe on board with like rocks or something that you can go, he's going to be hitting for like 4, somewhere between 3 to 5 maybe on turn 2.
What? Wait a minute. So if you swing, so let's say you cast him on turn 2 for some reason.
Yeah.
Like let's say you went early, like turn 1. Was it? It's Azorius.
Yes.
Okay. So turn 1 Esper Sentinel, turn 2 this guy. Then so he comes down, start your engine. He's at 1. You swing with the Esper Sentinel, hit somebody. Do you go to 2?
I think so.
Okay, I was confused.
I think so. I think that is how that portion of things works. So. Like, yeah, I think if you did turn 1 Esper Sentinel here, turn 2 into him, swing with the Esper Sentinel at someone that's open, then you're going to speed 2.
Okay, I was just about to say. Like,
it's really confusing, and that's why I don't think this is a great mechanic for our format, but I think it's good for other formats.
Yeah.
What?
Because we're dumb. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you're not...
I am, but it's
okay. I mean, yeah, decks are getting a little bit more combat-centric in cEDH, but that's not really what you're going for. No. And it would be different if, like, it would trigger each time an opponent lost life during your turn, because you can make that work, but it only triggers once.
Yeah. It would be cool if it was every turn. If somebody loses life, that would be sick.
That would be awesome.
You'd cast it on turn 1, and by the time it gets back to you, I mean, everybody's fetched probably once or tapped a freaking Mana Confluence or something. You're rocking and rolling, ready to go.
Right.
That's just, it feels really slow. But no, again, nothing against it. I think
I do think it's a slow mechanic. I don't think it's great. Yeah. I just wanted to play something. I thought he was a cool little robot, and I'm just like, let's feature this mechanic. But like in the deck itself, I kind of see this as kind of like how, again, we've mentioned Urza quite a bit, but I think it is almost plays Urza. It's going to play Urza in the 99, but plays to that outlet where you're playing a lot of artifacts. You might play some stacks effects that are on board to try to slow everyone else down. Or like, I think a great card in this is Blind Obedience, where you're forcing your opponent's creatures and artifacts to come into play tapped. You can potentially swing through. If you cast something, you pay 1 and you do the extort cost, that automatically triggers the start your engine. So that way, if you can't swing through, at least you're having a way of doing it. If you eventually have a way of like being able to loop things where like you can just like keep casting things, or like say if it's a hull breaker line, you could eventually like extort and pay into every single time you do it and be able to like drain the table out. Like there's a lot of different options for this, but I think the one combo in particular, and I feel like it requires so much setup, but I thought it was fun, is the Ugin's Nexus combo that's in this. So you run Mendicant in the command zone, you have max speed, you have Meticulous Excavation, which is a 1-drop enchantment that reads, I think you pay 2 and a white, and you could return a permanent to your hand. And then you cast Ugin's Nexus. If you have all that and enough mana, you make a copy of the Ugin's Nexus. As you cast it, the legend rule takes place. You put the token copy. From the Mendicant max speed effect, you put the token copy of Ugin's Nexus in the graveyard. That triggers to where you take an extra turn. So you're able to take infinite turns until you can potentially present a win. You're in the colors, like you can play the Heliod Ballista lines, like I just mentioned Hullbreaker in here, Urza being able to do things that way, like you could generate infinite mana through like the rings and Basalt Monolith and the Grim Monolith power artifact type stuff. Like I think that there's enough cool things within this that it's just like, that's neat. cEDH, probably not, but I could definitely see it as like a somewhat okay, like high power thing that still has like the cEDH combos in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's good. Like I said, and I wasn't trying to shit on it. I was trying to understand the mechanic more than anything.
You really hurt my feelings. I think you just shit all over it.
Yeah, I shit over Yuriko. That's what it
Well, it is a 2-drop commander.
Yeah,
so I know you're gonna
fuck
hate
this
it.
card. Fuck Hashaton. No,
Oh no, you've turned to the dark side. You're about to play a 2-mana commander.
it's better. It's better than.
At least Loot's 5.
Yeah, Loot's good. Loot's he's killing it.
Yeah, he's adorable.
Yeah.
I love him.
Loot kills Hashaton.
He does.
Yeah. Does he kill the Metacant?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Loot's the OG.
Kills Draenith. Kills Oppo. Kills Bowmaster. Kills whatever you want.
That's pretty solid.
He's great. You can only do it once though, so.
What about Seaborn Muse?
No, Seaborn's a 2/4.
Interesting. There you go.
Yeah. Now if
Plays
like,
Seaborn.
Huh?
Plays a Seaborn?
I would say so.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Like being able to untap and then like if you have to like ping something for 3, like it's a threat on board, or you just draw 3 cards and then you go into the next player's turn to untap everything. Yeah, you play Seaborn.
3 mana. Oh my god.
So I don't know how this deck is going to go. It's going to be interesting. Going back to the Metacant, it's going to be interesting. We're going to see what happens. Other than that, I don't have anything else on it. I'm still working on the build for it for whenever we play it. But I think I've got it almost figured out.
Nice.
The next commander that I have is like again very interesting. I don't know how much it's gonna do well. It might not do well, but we're gonna see what happens with it. So this is Captain Howler Sea Scourge. You
Cool.
laughed.
No, okay. I like the art.
You like the big shark.
Yes.
Like the Suicide Squad. I like that art where it's just like King Shark from Suicide Squad. He's like, hey. This is a 5/4 shark pirate. It's for 2 colorless, a blue and a red. So we're in Izzet colors, and he has ward pay 2 life, which is interesting. He's big old fatty in Izzet colors, and his effect says, whenever you discard 1 or more cards, target creature gets +2/+0 until end of the turn for each card discarded this way. Whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player this turn, you draw a card. What's your thoughts?
I think we're stretching for cEDH commanders.
We are. I will agree with you on that. We're a stretch. But I think he has a very unique build-around design. I know he's not great, but he's got interesting design space, and I want to see what he can do. And so what I've kind of fallen on for this, we're playing a bunch of will effects. Wheel of Fortune, Windfall, Wheel of Misfortune probably, Tolarian Winds. Does Seagate Restoration, does it make you discard? And I don't remember. I know it has a big draw effect. I don't remember off the top of my head. There's another card that is I think a legendary artifact that has a will, like a self-will effect. That's really interesting. But yeah, like the thing with this deck, you're in Izzet colors, you're trying to, like, you can potentially storm off with it. You are trying to play things like Glenthorn Buccaneer and Malcolm. You can do like Glenthorn Buccaneer, Curiosity, or Ophidian Eye and be able to, like, ping the table infinitely doing that. I just mentioned all the wheels within it. You could do the breach lines and the LED and brain freeze. I think that this is also a deck where you're trying to do a lot of like instant speed type stuff. So having like things like Valley Flood Caller. I actually have Kitsa. Is it Kitsa Otterball? Is that what it is? I have that in this deck where you can do that in the dramatic reversal and just make infinite copies of that to where you generate infinite mana. It's just hard to determine what are we going to sink this mana into. So like there's some other like effects that I've tried to play around with that aren't great. Cards like Sphinx's Tutelage. I've always wanted to find a deck to play that card in because there was a deck in Standard whenever I used to play that was Is It, and it was like a lot of like Tormenting Voice or like Thrill Possibility type effects where you are discarding cards and drawing cards and you're milling out your opponents. Like, so that's like maybe a piece that allows you to continue to draw cards and kind of do those effects to eliminate your opponents. But aside from that, like you're just trying to be cheeky, I think, with like this combat trick where you're discarding cards and buffing your creatures and you could swing out, or you're trying to draw into all of your combo pieces. You could probably do a dual caster line within this as well. Like I think that if you're playing enough will effects or like the draw discard like Faithless Looting or things like that, you could get to those pieces fast enough in order to present a win pretty quickly. It's just how much consistency is this deck going to have? Because like if you say you do something and you're like, well, I'm going to swing and then you didn't declare blockers, so I'm going to, have this flash effect where I'm going to wheel and then I'm going to copy it. I'm going to double wheel and try to take you out of the game. Well, fuck, there goes all your combo pieces. You just looked at 14 cards and you fucked up. So like you have to play around some of those synergies quite a bit, and that can make the deck pretty difficult, but I think if it can pop off, it will. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think it's interesting, and the shark is funny and has a bunch of Maui type tattoos on him too. So I actually just want like a combination. I actually just want the card to be the shark version of Maui, and like maybe Dwayne the Rock Johnson somewhere in there.
What is it with you and like these weird secret layers? You're like Dwayne Johnson, Will Ferrell.
I don't know.
It's good. Yeah, I like the hesitation.
I don't know. I think it'd just be funny. So I don't know. I again, this is an interesting card. We'll see what happens. I didn't really see anything else on the set that truly was like, I want to play this as a commander.
Yeah. So
that's where I'm at on that. Now, we did talk about this last one before we started recording.
Yeah.
And this is the Ketramos, the New Dawn. So this is an Orzhov commander. It's a god. It's a 4/4. So for a colorless, a white and a black, it has menace, lifelink, and indestructible, and can't attack or block unless there are 7 or more cards in exile. And I don't think it's just counting yours. I think it's counting exile in general. So that part of it's not bad. So the rest of the text says, whenever 1 or more cards are put into exile from your graveyards and or battlefield during your turn, you draw a card and lose 1 life.
So if it's put into exile from the battlefield or graveyard?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, I really think that this has to be, you want it to be main phase. So like we were talking about, it goes infinite with Necropotence. So you have to win or else you're dead. Like if you go Necro, because you'll discard, the triggers will go on the stack, they'll exile in the cleanup step, which will then create a trigger from this to draw you cards. You'll draw the cards, and then in cleanup, you'll have to discard more cards, and then you'll just continue to repeat this process. So you either have to do that and get rid of the Necro or whatever, or just die. So if you accidentally Necro too deep, then you're dead. Honestly, I think the best way to probably play this is going to be like some sort of like Abdel Adrian, like Reanimator strategy. So what you probably would do, I don't know for certain, but it's probably some sort of like, I guess it would be like Blood Artisty type of effects with things like Abdel Adrian, something that maybe can like break the parity on like, they lose a life, you gain a life, and then the other way around, it's like you're going to lose a life from the card draw, but again, because Abdel dies, you're going to gain a life, so then maybe you can just kill the table that way, and like you'll just kind of net 0 there. Or if you can Abdel will exile like the reanimate dead or the animate dead or the necromancy or whatever is bringing him back. And like when it exiles, you'll draw the card, gain a life, he'll die, it'll come back, and like you'll just do that. But if you could like Angel's Grace in your main phase, you could technically draw your whole deck and you'll still be protected because you won't die. You can stop the Abdel loop whenever you want to because you don't have to exile. So if you thought you were going to die, you don't have to. You can stop. But yeah, then after that, it just becomes like, how do you win with the deck?
Yeah.
And like, I think that's the only thing that I can think of is like Angel's Grace to get your whole deck to hand, spit out your rocks, and then I don't know where to go from there because Orzhov doesn't really have any great, just like I win the game type stuff.
Right.
Shoot, man, I really don't know. I'm sure, like we were talking about, there's probably some crazy Aetherfluxy combo, but I think that's terrible. I don't know. I'm curious I may throw a list together for this, but
and just see where you land on it.
But it's just interesting. I don't know, man. It screams Necropotence build all over it, but then like you don't have access to blue for all the in-step stuff. So you would have to go like Shimmermere or Liberator or Urza's Battlethopter for like flash stuff. It's only for colorless. I mean, technically, because it's got lifelink, you could do some shenanigans with like a Heliod, the Heliod, but then like you're trying to find two creatures in a deck that doesn't really like it's got versatile tutors, but they're not really, I don't know.
I don't know either. Like, and I was thinking about this as you're talking about it. Could this be even? You'd have to, again, kind of like we talked about earlier. You'd have to like rechange or revamp the composition of a deck in order to fit it in. But like, could this be like a blue farm card? Where like if you were trying to either do like Necropotent stuff and be more aggressive in blue farm, or you just start doing breach lines, and then as you're trying to mill yourself out, and then you're exiling cards for the breach effects, and then like you could draw more cards that way. Like, would this be a way of like just filtering through that deck way faster?
I don't know that you would want to do that if you were going to do breach, because you need to be able to kind of like have that free reign at that point to exile stuff. Like, because you could kill yourself basically from the exiles, like the exile type.
Right.
So you would have to be careful there. I think it's too much mana to be a blue farm card personally.
Well, I don't know. Some of those decks now are playing things like Delny and Professional Facebreaker and things like that.
I think if you were going to, like, this is just my opinion. I think that if you were going to play this, you would probably play, like, what's the other, it's an Orzhov commander. It's the same mana value, I'm pretty sure, but it puts +1 counters and you can draw cards and stuff like that. I just can't think of the name of it.
I can't think of it.
It's like an owl. I think you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if you.
I think I know maybe what you're talking about. I think it costs more than this, though.
Does it? Is it 4 mana?
Maybe.
I don't know. But I don't think that I just don't know what you would take out of blue farm to slot this in. So I don't think you would want to. There's not really a lot of good Orzhov cEDH commanders anyway. I mean, I think that that's probably it. Like, you just try to play it on its own and like really go into the exile type of effects. 'Cause I'm sure there's a bunch of really good exile type of effects. I would almost assume there has to be, like, even things like Madness, like you discard into exile, but like that's not from the graveyard or from battlefields. So that doesn't really do it for you. I guess you just really need stuff that's going to like help it go infinite.
Right.
But like, again, I'm sure that there's ways to do it. You just got to make sure you don't kill yourself.
I don't know. It's kind of like the last one we just talked about. It's a very interesting design space. I don't think either one of us have the brain power right now to figure out this card, but my recommendation is go over to cEDH TV, because they actually just put out a video where they played some of these commanders, and I think that this is the one that won that gameplay. And so go over, tell them we sent you. But
they'll say, who the fuck? What?
Who the fuck are these guys? Yeah. But go over there, watch their gameplay on it, because they actually do, like, they sit down and they try to, I think 3 out of the 4 are new commanders, and this deck is the one that won. Spoiler alert. But if you really want to kind of get into it and see how that deck performs, that's my recommendation.
Fair enough. Yeah, I have nothing else to say about this.
Yeah, it's kind of just sucks. Yeah. Kind of like this whole set. Like,
yep.
I don't know. maybe it gets me back into playing standard or even like a limited format because I've seen good cards for that, but I really don't want to take the time to dedicate to another format whenever I have everything else going on. And like with Commander as popular as it is, I don't see a point in trying to pivot and do all that.
I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna be real honest with you. It's not that I like Magic; it's that I like Commander.
Yeah.
So like, I'm not playing any other formats. I'm sticking with this, and if this shit dies, I'm out.
Fair enough. So
I got all my 1v1 action in the Yu-Gi-Oh world. And I'm over it.
I guess other than that, if you don't have anything else, I don't have anything else. Thank you all for watching today. Tell us what we missed. Tell us what your thoughts are. Tell us what your thoughts on if our opinions of this set are. If you feel like this is a good set, let us know. If you feel like we are and this isn't a good set, also let us know. But thank you so much for watching today and supporting us in our efforts to try to put out content for you all. And we just appreciate those that continue coming back. And with that being said,
go play cEDH.